All systems go. Clear for liftoff.
Welcome on in, golf fans. It's your boy GS Luke here with our round 2 live stream for the Farmers Insurance Open. Going to get you guys ready for all your showdown lineups. With first off, a look at some of the stat averages from today, a look at the weather report, how to handle that heading into tomorrow, and a little bit of a spoiler there. It's going to be really spicy in terms of the winds, so it'll be interesting to see how that all plays out. And then afterwards, we're going to go through a few DFS plays, some of the things on the stone that you guys can use out there for round 2 showdown, as well as a few different lineup construction notes over there on DraftKings that you should be thinking about when you're going out there with your builds. But by the end, we'll have all of your questions answered as well. So if you have any of those, feel free to go ahead and throw them down in chat. And so we already have a few of you down there. So what's going on? Nicholas, Kevin as well, John, D Pope, a lot of you guys down there, Michael, Odell, Ross, all of you guys included. Hopefully you guys are having a fantastic Wednesday. It's a little strange to say that after round 1, but are ready for all the action out there for Thursday. So in terms of what we saw out there on the golf course, it played a lot easier out there on the North course. So it played 1.78 under par as opposed to 0.58 over par on that course. And if you take a look at the birdie averages, and that's where you can see an even bigger discrepancy. The North course birdie or better average was 4.38 per round. And over there at the South course, I forget the exact number, but it was just a hair over 3.2 per round. I think it was like 3.22, something right around that number, but it was over a birdie difference out there from golf course to golf course. So not only did you have significantly more bogeys being made over there on the south side, but also more birdie production, which is really what we're looking for out there on the showdown side. So when you're going out there and taking your player pool for tomorrow, you should only be using players out here from this North course. It's the easier out of the two. There's over a 2-shot difference in round number 1. And even with some real nasty winds expected for tomorrow, you're going to see that course play a lot easier. And the reason I can tell you that is the course length and also some of the more scoreable holes around the North course. So not only is it about 500 yards shorter, it has a little bit less substantial rough as well, but you also have to factor in that you have 2 drivable par 4s over there, 0 over there at the other course, and then all of the par 5s over there at the North course are reachable in 2. You had one that played 2/3 of a stroke under. You can see these ones here at 9 and 10 played about 0.4 strokes, 0.5 strokes over here at 10. You have a lot of holes that even in windy conditions, right, maybe 1-2 of them are playing into the wind tomorrow, but the other 2 that are in neutral or maybe even beneficial wind directions are going to play extremely under par. So out of the 2 courses, you're going to see by far more birdies over here. Maybe it's not a whole entire birdie difference just because I think both averages are going to go down with the kind of winds that we're expecting. We'll do more of a deep dive over there in a second, but it's just to show you guys that I think you would be targeting guys out there from this course. And if we take a look at the round 1 leaderboard, a vast majority of those players came from the North course. So a few of the exceptions to the rule would be a Danny Walker, who, by the way, hit all 18 greens around the South course, which is, I don't know if they have stats on that, but it can't be a list of too many people that have been able to accomplish that around the South course. So tip of the hat out there to Danny Walker. Lee Hodges here at -5. KH Lee got to the same number. A few guys at -4, like a Hideki, Chan Kim, Norman Zhang, there at -4 score. But what you can see around them is just a sea of blue, right? It's the sea of the ocean of blue on the North course, especially of the guys that shot -6 or better. In fact, of the guys that shot -6 or better, those 7 players, only one of them, Danny Walker, was able to pull it off over there on the South course. So if you play guys from the South course, you might get, a needle in a haystack that goes out there and shoots you something that gets close to an optimal lineup. But if you want to go out there and reliably play guys that are getting to this kind of score, you're going to have a much better chance playing guys on the North course. So that 2-shot advantage isn't anything to scoff at. I personally am leaning that way for my entire player pool. And I could see the, ownership angle on taking some of the South Course guys. I already did my ownership and projections out here for tomorrow, and I can tell you that I have the guys out there on the North Course significantly higher owned than what they have on the other side of things, which is going to make for a little bit of ownership issues up top. There's not a lot of guys playing the North Course tomorrow that are there from $8,000 plus. A vast majority of them are going to be playing the harder of the two golf courses. So you're going to have really inflated ownership on those. I think it's like 5, maybe 6, maybe it's like 6, 7 guys that you have on that course at the top end of the board. But outside of that, though, your 6, 7K range players, you're going to be able to differentiate with. So I think getting cute and going to some of these South Course guys would just be getting a little too cute, in my opinion, even with these kind of conditions. So let's take a look at these weather models, and what you'll see over here in Torrey Pines is that they're calling for much more wind. So both from the sustained perspective and out there from the wind gust perspective, it's going to be a lot more significant. And really what worries me, I'd say like 15 miles an hour of sustained would lead to some tough scoring. But what kind of worries me with the scoring is the 30 mile an hour wind gust. You can see it's about 35 miles an hour at its peak. I guess when a front is coming through around 10 a.m., they might be wrong about the exact timing of it, but for a little short period tomorrow, they might have to stop play if they have 40 mile an hour wind gusts. So it's going to be something to keep an eye on, especially out there from the prop angle, any sort of bets that you guys are putting out there for round 2. But know that the scores are going to be much harder to come by. So this minus 1.78 scoring average probably going to go down quite a little bit. And it doesn't change our strategy of what golf course we're going after, but more so, I guess, just put into perspective that you're not going to see as many low scores. Something like -9 is probably not achievable tomorrow. You're probably going to see guys cap off at that -6, -7 range. So an optimal play is probably something around -5. A -4 with a whole lot of birdies, maybe a few bogeys mixed in, might be what you're looking for out there in those large field GPPs. So just to go through all the models here to make sure that we're doing it to completion, you can see that they're all calling for some sustained wins. I'd say most significantly on this HRRR model, but what I'll say is that historically it is the most accurate of the models that we have over here. And you have this ECM that looks the exact same. Ones like the Medio Blue model are maybe a little bit calmer, but not by much, right? Maybe 3-4 miles an hour across the board. But it should be pretty blustery out there, especially in the afternoon. So that's what we have from the weather perspective. In terms of your tee times over there on the Stone, they are going to have those designated. If you don't have access to SHIPIT Nation quite yet, which by the way, you should have access to it if you guys haven't already, make sure to use code Luke10 if you guys haven't already when you're signing up to get a discount off any of those memberships. But you're going to have all these designated for you on there. So round 2, if you don't have it, come over here to the PGA Tour site, go over here to the tee time tab. You can see all the guys that are playing on the North Course. And what I'll say about this as well, I meant to mention this when we were going through the stats, is starting on hole number 1 is preferable over starting on hole number 10. If you start on hole number 1, you get to go to hole number 9 here at the end of your front 9. And then hole number 10 right after that is a par 5. So you had a par 5 that played about 0.4 strokes under. After that, one that had over right about a 50% birdie rate over there at hole 10. And then 11's a drivable par 4. And it's not really reachable by the field. It's just out of reach for the driver. But if you're a long bomber off the tee, you could see a player going into 9 here, taking advantage of a 550-yard par 5. 530 yards, right? Even into the wind, you're probably reaching those two if you're a bomber off the tee. And then at 11, the real key to making birdie there is just hitting it up near the green, which if you're a long player, you can do, and then having a stout putter because you're going to hit it to like 5 to 10 feet, maybe 15 feet if you're not the best short game player. I would say bombers that have a good putter, especially on this POA that we have this week, and it's actually, I guess it's bent grass over there, the North Course. So I would say actually bombers that have good bent grass stats would be kind of what you want to look at over here for this 3-hole stretch. So starting on 1 is where you get that advantage. If you're teeing off of hole number 10, right, you're going to start on hole 10 and you're not going to have hole 9 leading into that other par 5. So that's why I would say that starting on the North Course and hole number 1 is maybe the hot pocket when it comes to playing guys for tomorrow. So you can find that over there on the PGA Tour site, what hole a player is starting on for the next day. And that is definitely something that I would be keeping my eye on. Let me catch up on chat, see what's going on, any specific questions and whatnot, and we'll get this thing moving on. We'll look at some shots gained metrics. That's what we're mainly going to do. We're going to talk about the stone a little bit as well. So let me go over here. We'll bring up the shots gained ball striking leaders. I'll let you guys admire the top end of that board as we go through some of the questions here in chat. Always good to get some water while we're doing this as well. So where did we leave off? So, yeah, there were some withdrawals today, Nicholas. It was kind of crazy. Guys like Woodland, Will Zalatoris, Ryan Moore after he was added to the field. The Will Zalatoris one, I see we're asking about the timing of those two. The Willie Z one did happen before lock. So unfortunate there. But one thing I'd say to do to make sure that you can improve your process is make sure you're following the PGA Tourcom's Twitter and turn on their notifications, especially before lock. They'll be giving you all that news as soon as they can. And this morning, if you had that on, they did give you the Willie Z news. So make sure to do that if you haven't already. You played round one showdown, a late round one showdown, you said. You only took a few guys from the North Course. You took over first at times, but settled for a small profit. Yeah, I'd be looking for guys from the North Course at all 6 spots. That would be my main focus, especially with hard conditions. Like that South Course with that long rough around the green, you're missing greens, which you're going to see a lot more missed greens tomorrow. It's going to be a problem for guys. What's going on, Michael Pepe? Welcome on in, my man. What's going on, Michael, as well? What's going on, Ross? What do I say? Round 2 showdown. Let's have a day. I love it. Amen to that, my man. What's going on, Phil? You were watching and saw Homa start with a triple and felt bad for him. Yeah, me too. And he looked really off for the first 5-6 holes. I actually had a few people in my Discord asking like if something was wrong with Max Homa, because it wasn't just like he had a few bad shots on approach. Every single category was off. He was not making anything from 5 to 10 feet. His chipping, he had the yips. He bladed 2 balls out of a bunker, and his approach play was off. He missed every single fairway. But after he chipped in on hole 6, which is an easy hole, right? An eagleable hole that is reachable by the entire field, it flipped the switch in him. From that point on, he was excellent out there towards the end of his round. So crazy. I felt bad for him as well. It clearly impacted him with the next 3-4 holes. He had at least one more double, another bogey on top of that. But way to turn it around. Like he had one thing go right for him. And, you know, I guess that's all he needed to go out there and parlay it into a decent day. Any rules or a minimum of guys from the course? Yeah, definitely all 6 guys from the North Course, if you're able to set that kind of a rule. And then the tee times, I wouldn't worry about as much. You're not going to be able to avoid any sort of weather. There's only about a 2-hour spread of tee time. So I wouldn't do it with the tee time waves or anything like that. I'd more so go out there and focus on like all guys from the North Course. What happened to Max Homa? So yeah, I know we had the question about that. No idea, but whatever happened at the beginning of the round lasted about 5 holes, and then it went away. What's going on, Phil? Woodland didn't have time to withdraw, but we saw Willie Z withdrew. Yeah, you hit the nail on the head answering that question we had from before. It was nice to get that news. I was able to get all my lineups fixed. It was about 40 minutes before lock. I was able to update my projections, get them on my site with about 40 minutes to go, which I tell people to turn on notifications. I do everything I can to get that news out. So hopefully you guys are able to do so yourselves. It's a tough situation. Unless you're somebody like me that does this for a living, it's really easy to change your lineups. But for a vast majority of people, right, it's very difficult to do because you're at work. Even if you work from home, it's hard to do if you're on meetings and shit. Like I get that, right? That's the smartest option, Pope. Cut playable to only North Course. Yeah, dude, if you have an option to just like select a course, just get the South guys out of there. You don't want to play them at all. That's my take on it. Love the Malbon hat. They are helping Gleazy get your official hot dog of golf going. Nice. Yeah, I like Malbon stuff. They've got a lot of interesting options out there. And my brother works for them, so I get to see a lot of them. What's going on, Michael? Wind will be shaking those trees, that's for sure. Is there an easy way to cut your player pool? Yeah, we're going to talk about that right now, Pope. We're going to go through some shots gained metrics. How did my lineups do today? I don't play round 1 showdown. So how they're doing in main slate, they're doing pretty solid. They're about break even right now. And that's with a few guys that were out there on the South Course today. In fact, like all my value plays, my 6-7K range is like full of guys that were playing that golf course that tomorrow get to play the easier golf course. Up top, I kind of did it the opposite. It wasn't on purpose, me going out there and making my player pool like this, but a lot of my studs played the easier golf course today. And then a lot of my guys down low played the harder golf course. So we'll have to see how that works out. As of right now, break even. So we'll have to see, which for GPPs, I guess is positive, right? With the rake involved. What's going on, Ross? Who's withdrawing tomorrow morning? Maybe Hideki. I don't know. Anyone else? Probably not withdrawn. No coffee tonight. Nope. I don't need to stay up. I'll be doing this for an hour, then going to bed probably at 10 p.m. So no coffee. Follow Luke too. He tweeted it out as well, of course. I tweet out a lot of different stuff out there before different rounds, so make sure to check out all of that. Went 7X in Showdown, taking only North Course plays. That's good to hear. Yeah, I threw that out there on Twitter, trying to get it out there to as many people as possible, especially going after guys starting on hole 1. Like that edge, it's not a massive edge going out there and getting that birdie streak, but when you're trying to win a GPP, like any point counts, as you guys probably know from being in that situation. Simulator flow lag is real. I'm assuming you're talking about the TGL stuff. TGL, by the way, I love it at this point, but the guys like Fitzpatrick suck on it. I'm not sure what you're talking about, frankly, but I'm assuming something along those lines. After Max Homa thinned his first bunker shot, you knew he was lost. I thought so too. If a player isn't ideal with these stats, is it better to X them out of the player pool? We'll talk about it. We're going to go through the stats. Let me get to it before you start asking questions about it, right? What's going on, Jonathan? Just letting you know that you're great to listen to. I appreciate you, Jonathan. And yeah, let's go. Where did I go to follow? GS LukeDFS on Twitter. I have that on Twitter/X. Let's get to this real quick. So the shots gained metrics, these are all the guys that played at the South Course, which coincidentally are all the guys that we're looking at for Showdown tomorrow. So if you're going to go out there and exit guys out of the player pool, all these guys at the bottom that don't have shots gained metrics, that means that they played the easier golf course. So you may say like, oh, all these like -5 rounds, all these guys that made like 5, 6, 7, 8 birdies. Like, oh, I'm going to go and play them in my lineups tomorrow. If you're a leaderboard watcher, you're going to get kicked in the nuts for your round 2 lineups. You've already talked about how you want to play guys on the North Course. And luckily for us, we actually have the stats to look at for those players because of the kind of situation that we have. So the guys that played the harder golf course and that struck the ball well could be worth a few extra looks out there for tomorrow. So you can see up here that Cage Lee absolutely striped his irons, gained over 4 strokes out there on approach. Lee Hodges also gained over 2 strokes on approach himself. A lot of these top end finishers, I don't want to say every single one, but of these like top, let's say 10 players at the top end of the board, I think like almost all of them are in my player pool. I think there's 2 of them that I'm not playing out there in my player pool, but these guys that are all striping it out there with their ball striking are all going to be in my exposure for tomorrow. So they're playing the proper golf course. Some of them are a little bit chalky, like a Tony Finau. Matsuyama is going to be well over 30% owned. A lot of that because of people knowing to play the guys on the North Course. Guys like Norgard, he had an excellent round, his first time ever on the PGA Tour. Gained both off the tee and on approach, exactly what we want to see. Almost 3 strokes on approach, which is elite tier stuff. Those kind of guys are just no-brainer plays for me over here in Showdown. So, sometimes I talk about core plays, that sort of thing. My core plays for tomorrow are the top end of the ball striking board. In fact, I could extend that list the whole way down to like, I hate to do this. I hate to like give away so much of my player pool that I post on my website, but like the whole way down to Cristobal de Soler and up, I think it's like I think everyone but 2 guys is out there in my player pool. Out there from that point to the ball striking board. So my process is pretty simple for tomorrow, right? I'm trying to take guys that hit the ball well over there on the hard golf course, that are playing the easier golf course over there for tomorrow. And that's not my entire player pool, right? I have a 150 max pool, so I've got to play a lot more than that. I'm also looking for guys that are high birdie percentage players. That's the way I go out there and find some plays. Then another thing I'm doing is looking for some bombers. I already mentioned the fact that making some birdies on hard conditions is, I think, going to come down to the easy scoreable holes, whether it's those reachable par 5s, the reachable par 4s that you have over there on the North Course. That's why I'm looking at some bombers rather than even good putters. I think that putting in that wind can be a little bit of luck at times, especially if it's gusting to like 30 miles an hour. So I think that raw power is the most measurable thing that we have to look for in players. And especially on the North Course, I think it leads to a lot of success. So that's personally what I'm doing out there in my process. If we want to go through a few specific categories, I'm going to take a look at like the top approach players. Doug Gim, especially popping on approach, lost about a stroke off the tee. So hopefully he can clean that up a little bit, but it is a much shorter golf course, which suits him a little bit better than what you had at the South Course. Chan Kim gained nearly 3 strokes with his irons. And Sam Ryder, of course, with a really good course history around here, he gained over 2 strokes on approach. Does need to clean up the driver, but if he can do so, I think really sets up well out there for round 2 showdown. So those guys, by the way, a lot of them I just mentioned are out there in my player pool. And that's really what I do for my process, right? Especially if I'm already eliminating half the field. I already have all the guys on the South course that I'm not going to play. I can just go to the top of the shots gained metrics. And if the ownership isn't too crazy on them, they're almost just a no-brainer play for me over there in round 2 showdown. So that's out there for 150 max. If you're trying to narrow it down, then obviously that's where ownership comes into play. That's where, if you're trying to play in a single entry, you're trying to choose between somebody that's relatively chalky and somebody that's a little bit lower owned, then you might want to make that decision. So to give you an example of that, KH Lee at over 4 shots gained approach is going to be quote unquote chalky compared to some of the other guys down there in the 6K range. If you're playing in a large field GBP for tomorrow, right, you might want to consider going to a different 6K play, right? Maybe it's Mateo Manacero, who also had a really good ball striking day. He's down there in that 6K range as well, but he's going to be probably half the ownership that you have there with the KH Lee. In KH Lee's ownership, by the way, I think I have in like the 3 to 4% range on my projections, which isn't anything outrageous. But when you're comparing it to mostly guys sub 1%, in a lot of cases, maybe 1 to 2% owned, if they're getting a little bit steam, you can see why I'd call them chalk down there in that 6K range. So that's just one example of kind of like whittling down your player pool. But especially in like single entries where you just got to go out there and take a set of 6 players, I think ownership should be one of your guiding, tools that you're going out there and using. On the SHIPIT Nation site, of course, they have ownership that they'll have posted when they get all of their projections in stone updated for round number 2. Make sure to use that. And then you can look at specific stats like off the tee. I would say that the off the tee distance is really what I'm using. I already told you guys I want power players out there in my player pool. But if you want to look at putting, you want to look at birdie or better percentage, like there are a lot of different stats that you can use to guide your process. I think the key is to go out there and just stick to your process, right? Don't go out there and blindly pick players out there in your player pool. You should have some sort of guiding tools taking you on to tomorrow, because oftentimes we see correlated lineups win, especially when we have wacky conditions like this. If my hypothesis about the scoring really being on those like par 5s and drivable par 4s, if that ends up really coming to fruition tomorrow, having stacked lineups is going to be really useful for me out there in GPPs. Doesn't mean I'm going to be right? That's what I'm doing out there in my process. You guys don't have to do the same exact thing. If it's putters, again, any key stat that you guys really want to lean into, then do so. I think that's a good idea, especially out there in the large field GPPs. Let me see if there's any questions about specific guys. And if not, we're going to talk some lineup construction now. Looks like we're good on questions. So in terms of lineup construction, we're going to build a few GPP lineups together. So the idea is, here is going to be to go through the thought excuse me, guys. I burped there. Didn't mean to do that. My apologies. Let's go through the thought process when we're actually building a lineup, though. So up here towards the top end of the board, we want to make sure we're focusing on the North Course guys. And ownership up top is going to be extremely condensed when it comes to the guys playing on the proper golf course. So Hideki Matsuyama will be one of the few players that is playing out there in North. Same thing with the Tony Finau. He played the harder South course today. You have a few more players down here in the 8K range. Shane Lowry, also Max Homa, are playing the harder golf, the easier golf course, I should say, over there for tomorrow. So maybe we throw in a Shane Lowry down there, $8,200. Up top, Hideki's nearly 40%. I've got a Tony Finau at nearly 30%. I think it's single entries, he'll probably be well over that 30% number. And Shane Lowry in that 15 to 25% range, depending on what contest that you're entering. I think GPP is probably closer to that 15%. Single entries, close to 25% plus. As in round 1 showdown contest, 81% of lineups went out there and used guys from the North Course, and that was at all 6 spots. So most of the field was privy to the edge, which means that these guys up top are going to be significantly higher owned. So I don't think it's a bad idea to take guys like this up here towards the top end of the board. I guess the key is knowing that with the rest of your lineup. Your last 3 spots, if you're playing in a large field GPP, you're going to have to offset the ownership. Like there's no way around that, right? You're going to have to go out there and take a few guys to get different to the field. So a Max Homa, while he doesn't look like the best play on paper, his last 12 holes were fantastic. In fact, his last 13 holes were pretty solid out there for round number 1. He plays the easier golf course, one that historically he's played very well at. Why not take a chance on him out there for tomorrow, especially if he's going to get us some leverage at $8,100. Our next man in will go towards like the bottom end of the 7K range. We'll take a Patrick Fishburne here, who had a decent ball striking day, but lost a bunch of strokes putting. He's pretty good on POA historically, so that was a little bit surprising out there with his putting performance today. But now he gets to play on the easier golf course. He's super long off the tee, and he's going to be sub 3-4% owned. Is essentially unowned down in that range because of his 127 position heading into round number 2. So not a lot of people like to play guys that far down. And now we're down at $6,600. And I don't want to say that you can play anyone down here and get away with it, but pretty much, because everyone down here is at most like 4% owned. And in most cases, you're getting 1 to 2% ownership on plays towards the bottom end of the board. So, and Nick Hardy gets to play the easier golf course tomorrow. Sam Ryder, we already mentioned him in this live stream. Like you could use him to round off that kind of lineup. But the idea here is that you're going to have some chalk towards the top end of the board where you really just have to worry about getting that leverage is down in that 7K range, 6K range as well, but it's a little bit easier to do so when everyone is sub 5%. But the 7K range is where you want to avoid some of that chalk. And while I can't bring up my projections here on the live stream, I can give you guys a few of the players that I have getting some ownership. So just to give you guys a few of those, Steven Yeager at like 15%, somebody that I would point out. Thomas Dietrich at like 13% is somebody that's getting some ownership as well. Doug Gim is getting some ownership. I've got him well over 10%. Muller, Nicholas Norgard Muller, I've got him at nearly 15% ownership. And at the bottom end of the 7Ks, I've got Lee Hodges at nearly 10% ownership. So those are a few guys that are garnering attention. And in most cases, are players that are towards the top end of the board or that had a solid round 1 performance. That combined with them playing on the North Course is why they're getting a little bit more attention than most out there. What I want to point out now is the Stone, which I think is going to be especially valuable out here for round 2. So for round 2, we have those shots gain metrics to look at, but on the Stone, you're going to have the round 2 historical data to be able to go through, which will be huge out there for tomorrow. And then also bad round regression. And the reason I mentioned bad round regression as being especially helpful is you have a lot of guys coming from the South Course that beats up people, right? That is playing over par, guys that shot 2-3 over. On the Stone, looking at those bad round regression guys, it's a really good gauge of their ability to kind of put that behind them and move on to a better Friday, which is going to be an easier golf course. It's going to be nasty conditions, but if they're able to put that behind them, they can go out there and shoot someone like 5-6 under par. So make sure to check out all of that over there on the Stone. I do want to point out somebody over here that absolutely smashed for this week, and that would be Hayden Springer down here at $6,600. On the Stone, he was down there as a sleeper play, as you can see there with the pink highlighting, and also somebody that on DGen's scorecard is a really good player at longer golf courses, and also a good round 1 score, if memory serves me correctly. So if you're using DGen's scorecard, which by the way is another great tool to use out there for your round 2 showdown process, on top of just what you have here with the Stone. And by the way, what you get with the DGen's notes is more of just like there's some comedy involved, which I like with it, but also the more skill set stuff. If you're not somebody that watches the PGA Tour every single round, that doesn't follow Shot Tracker for their players every single day, you might not know, who's a good chipper, who's a good long iron player, who's, not very good off the tee, et cetera, et cetera. The DGen's notes gives you a short kind of Spark Notes version of the skill set out there for every single player. So, an example of a Hayden Springer there, you had him down as a sleeper play and as a good round 1 score. So if you used him today in his -7, he had some of the most birdies of anyone in the field. You would have done pretty well out there in Showdown, especially if you paired him up with Aubert, who's there at -9. So Aubert, by the way, hopefully he keeps going out there and nuking this event. Does have the harder golf course tomorrow, but as somebody with an outright ticket, yeah, I'm gonna hope he keeps it going. I'm not gonna play him in Showdown. I'm not gonna make that kind of mistake, but this golf tournament in general is one that I thoroughly enjoy. And from the showdown perspective, I think there could be an edge. There was only 81% of lineups that played guys from the North Course, which means that over 20%, which is higher than the rake in most contests, pretty much every contest over there in DraftKings, played guys from the wrong golf course, which is going to be huge over there for your ROI. So don't look at it as rake free. Anything that you get in terms of rake free would be great over there at your exposure. But it's one to take advantage of and one to go out there. And I'll certainly be playing quite heavy over there from round 2 showdown. So let's see if there's any last second questions. If not, we're going to hop on out of here. So where are we at? Let me get a sip of water. You're referring to Homa with the simulator. Okay. I see what you're saying. Now, probably nothing but the dude let you down. I agree. I also played him for an under on strokes today that made one of my slips miss. So I feel you on that. He let me down a little bit too. But after the triple on hole 1, I've got to say I was pretty resigned to him going over. So the whole like 3, 4, and 5 debacle was just like the cherry on top, right? Am I leaning driving accuracy more with the wins or still distance? Definitely distance because of the North Course. It's a shorter track. So if there's like a hole where you have to hit the fairway, they're going to hit something less than driver. But those holes like the par 5s, especially if they're playing into the wind, you're going to have to be a bomber to get to them, which I think is going to be really big. Day got shut out today. You didn't expect that. I agree with that. I'll be playing him though. That's for sure. He's a good bounce back candidate with the putter. He lost strokes putting, gained with the irons. He's also really good around the North Course here. So you'd rather go fishing rather with Fishburne. Yeah, I agree. I like fishing too, but I'm playing him. The stat profile, just to show it to you, right? I'm not just pulling that out of my ass or anything like that. I don't do that. Let's show you the Patrick Fishburne stat profile, which from the stat perspective looks pretty great. If I could spell fish, that'd be fantastic. You see, he gained out there in approach, lost over 2 strokes putting. And I can tell you that on those POA greens, he normally gains about 0.5 strokes per round. So I think he's a good bounce back candidate. What about Zach Johnson? He's on the tougher course. Yeah, you probably don't want to play him. I wouldn't do that. Would it be a slate where I drop my minimum salary to get different since so much of the field will only be using half the field? I'm not sure I would force it in, Paul, especially because you have guys down low that you can take for that differentiation. But it's going to be harder to get to that lower product ownership. But if you set a max product ownership, then it's going to be the same, even if you have like a different, ownership perspective. So I would say no, just make sure that you have those caps set. If you use a cumulative ownership, just make sure it's at the same kind of number that you normally have it at. Same thing with the product ownership. All good. Yeah, make sure you don't play guys on that course, by the way. That's the only real big mistake you could make for Showdown. Let's go Springer, go Horned Frogs. Yeah, he's an absolute stud. He's a member of the 59 club as well. I think he only got 59 once, but that's pretty sweet. And that's all I got out there for the Showdown stream. So I appreciate you guys stopping by as per usual. Go ahead and smash the like button out there for the Ship It Nation, guys. If you guys haven't already, also subscribe so you don't miss any of the content to come. They've got great stuff over there on their website. Already mentioned using code Luke10 if you guys haven't already to go ahead and get a discount off any membership over there. But great stuff for all the other sports as well. They've got NBA stuff, MMA, NASCAR, NFL, you name it over here during the playoffs. Make sure to go ahead, sign up if you guys haven't already. Using that code to help support the channel here a little bit over here with me and what I'm doing in my content. And by the way, for the betting and prop preview over here for round number 2, that's going to be on my YouTube channel. So over here on these live streams, I would like to focus on the Showdown side over here on Ship It Nation, but over here on the GS Luke channel, which you can find over there on YouTube, just type in GS Luke DFS over there in the search bar. We'll be live a little bit later on tonight out there with the prop side of things. So if you play underdog props, prize picks props, 3 balls, matchups, that sort of thing, we'll have you covered. So make sure to stop on by over there if you guys want to get all of that action in as well. And we'll have ourselves a Thursday over there for this event. It's I'm going to end up tripping up on that like 1,000 times by the end of the week, but let's go out there and have ourselves a Thursday at this event.